Breaking news, Oscar award-winning actor Robert Redford has died at 89 years old. Redford's rep tells ABC News he passed away at his home in Utah, surrounded by loved ones.
The tributes pouring in for a Hollywood icon, actor and director Robert Redford. A career of unforgettable roles, from Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid to The Sting.
The thing I live for and always have lived for is creating art. So making films is the most important thing.
And also making films with a heart.
And a story, a good story, good character development, and a heart.
Robert Redford's story is not ending with silence. It is echoing through the tears of his family. What he left behind is far greater than money. It is an unforgettable legacy. Let's find out. A legend fades and a legacy rises. When Robert Redford leaves behind his fortune, the headlines will count the dollars, but the real inheritance is measured in tears.
The name Robert Redford stands out. He's a legend, but legendary careers don't last forever.
His family is crying tonight, not because of numbers on a page, but because of what those numbers represent. A lifetime of work, a story of risks taken and rewards earned, a fortune too large to calculate, not only in money, but in meaning. Robert Redford was never just a movie star. He was a man who carried the weight of an era, a man who turned Hollywood into something wider, deeper, more thoughtful. To millions, he was the face of rebellion, charm, and truth. To his family, he was something even more precious: a husband, a father, a grandfather, a presence whose absence can never be replaced. So when the world says fortune, they hear something different. They hear laughter around a dinner table. They hear advice whispered before a career-changing decision. They hear footsteps on mountain trails in Utah, where he built more than a resort. He built a sanctuary.
There needs to be a place for just digesting life in its natural form.
And now, in the silence left behind, that fortune makes them cry. Because money can be counted, but love cannot. Because property can be divided, but memories cannot. Because fame can fade, but legacy only deepens. It is tempting to reduce a life like his into a net worth figure. $200 million, some estimates say. A number that looks impressive in print, a number that the press will repeat. But money alone is not why tears fall in that house tonight. His family cries because the money is only the surface. The true fortune is layered. His career, his art, his activism, his stewardship of land.
Because you can't guarantee where the trying is going to get you. So you can't guarantee the result. But the only thing that is in place is the trying. That's where the action is.
His decision to take his fame and build something larger than himself. Think about what he created. The Sundance Institute began as an idea. Artists who did not fit the Hollywood mold deserved a chance to tell their stories. Independent cinema was struggling, ignored by big studios that only wanted blockbusters. But Redford saw something others did not. He believed in the power of small stories, strange voices, bold visions. He carved out a space where filmmakers could experiment, fail, grow, and eventually shine. Today, when you watch a breakthrough film by a once unknown director, you are likely seeing the ripple of Sundance. That ripple is part of the fortune. Now imagine being his daughter, his grandchild, or his wife, standing in the shadow of that fortune. The money matters, yes, but it is the weight of the legacy that brings the tears. Because how do you live inside a story that large? How do you honor it without being swallowed by it? That is why the family cries, not only for loss, but for the magnitude of what has been left behind. The land is another part of that inheritance. Redford chose Utah, not Malibu. He invested in mountains, rivers, and trees, not just mansions and cars. He built Sundance Resort, not as a playground for the rich, but as a place where art and nature could meet. When he sold it later in life, he insisted on protections, on conservation, on promises that the land would not be destroyed by greed. He made sure that the slopes, the trails, the streams would remain intact for generations. His family inherits that promise. They inherit the sound of wind in trees he protected. They inherit sunsets that roll down the mountains he loves. That is a fortune no calculator can hold.
You know, I can't do this forever. I've been doing it since I was 21. As you move into your 80s, you say, hey, that's enough.
And then there are the films. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. The Sting. All the President's Men. The Natural. Ordinary People. Each film was not just a role, but a reflection of his instincts, his courage to choose projects that mattered. Some made fortunes at the box office, some changed political conversations, some simply reminded people of beauty in storytelling. To his family, those films are more than cinema. They are artifacts. They are proof that he gave himself fully to his art, that he chased excellence not for fame, but for truth. When his family watches those films now, they do not just see Robert Redford the star. They see the man they knew at home, frozen in time, young and vibrant, captured in light. That too is part of the fortune. A man who gave so much of himself that even strangers feel like they lost someone close. But let us return to the tears. Why do they fall so heavily? Because every fortune is double-edged. To inherit so much is to inherit the responsibility of carrying it. His daughters and grandchildren will live in the shadow of both wealth and reputation. They will feel the weight of expectation, the watchful eyes of a world that still whispers the name Robert Redford with reverence. That pressure makes gratitude heavy. It makes love ache. It makes memories sting. And yet, there is something beautiful in that ache. It is the proof of a life well lived. If no one cried, the fortune would mean little. If no one felt the weight, then what was left behind would have been shallow. The tears are a measure of depth. They are the true valuation. Robert Redford's fortune is not just about his family either. It belongs in part to the world, to every filmmaker who got a start at Sundance, to every activist who found a platform through his voice, to every conservationist who saw him fight for rivers, forests, and clean air. His family cries because they know they are not only inheritors of wealth, they are inheritors of obligation. They must guard, nurture, and extend what he built. That realization is both overwhelming and inspiring. Imagine the scene. A quiet house in Utah. The man who once commanded screens around the globe is gone. Family gathers, holding one another, remembering stories, replaying laughter, touching keepsakes. Outside, the mountains stand silent, like witnesses. Inside, the air is heavy, but not empty. Papers sit on a desk. Legal documents, trusts, distributions, but alongside them sit handwritten notes, photographs, sketches. The real fortune is not in the safe. It is in the stories that only his family knows. A whispered joke he always told. A ritual before dinner. A lesson repeated so often that it now feels like part of their blood. That is what makes them cry. Not greed, not loss of wealth, but the recognition that they were loved by a man whose reach was global, yet whose heart was always local. A man who could change cinema but still show up for family dinners. A man who could fight for forests while still sitting quietly with a grandchild. That balance is rare. That is the true fortune. So when the world asks how much Robert Redford left behind, the answer is simple.
Rather than talking about retiring, you just kind of slip easily into another territory.
More than anyone can measure. His family will count the dollars, yes, but the dollars will not move them. What moves them are the moments, the promises, the legacy. What moves them is the realization that fortune is not just money. Fortune has meaning, and he left behind more meaning than most of us will ever hope to touch. Robert Redford's fortune is not simply a reflection of his fame. It is a reflection of the values he lived by and the sacrifices he carried silently. to understand why this fortune makes his family cry. You must step into the deeper chapters of his story. Behind the charisma, behind the awards, behind the elegance of a man who seemed untouchable, there were scars. Some scars were personal, others were public, but all of them shaped the legacy that now rests in the hands of those he loved most. His activism was one of those chapters. Redford did not choose the easy path of being just another Hollywood star. He chose to speak, to protest, to fight for the planet. At a time when many actors avoided politics, Redford confronted it. He marched for clean air. He spoke against reckless energy policies. He warned about the dangers of ignoring the environment. He spent money, time, and reputation to protect landscapes that others wanted to exploit. That kind of conviction is not free. It costs friendships. It costs opportunities. It costs energy that could have been spent elsewhere. When his family cries over his fortune, part of it is the recognition of that cost. They know he could have taken a smoother path. He could have chosen silence and comfort. Instead, he chose to challenge power. He used his influence not to extend his fame, but to amplify causes larger than himself. His children grew up watching him pour money into battles that brought no return. They watched him sacrifice the easy way for the meaningful way. And now, as they inherit both the financial wealth and the activist spirit, they cry because they know the weight of what they must carry. There were personal losses too, losses that no fortune can erase. Redford's first child, Scott, died of sudden infant death syndrome at only 2 months old. That tragedy cut into him so deeply that it reshaped how he looked at life. It made him protective, tender, and cautious. It made him value family above all else. To his surviving children, the memory of their brother was a reminder that fortune is fragile. It can disappear in a heartbeat. They carry that loss as part of the fortune, too. When they cry today, it is not just for their father's absence, but for the echo of that early wound that shaped him as a father. Redford himself never hid from grief. He admitted in interviews that pain shaped him as much as success. He said that loss gave him perspective, that it made him see how precious time is, how quickly joy can be taken away. That is why he valued nature, why he fought for film, why he poured himself into work. He knew life was temporary. His family now sees that philosophy written into everything he left behind. They cry because they know every dollar, every acre of land, every film was created by a man who understood how fleeting it all was. The fortune also includes the empire of Sundance, not just the Institute, but the film festival that grew into one of the most important cultural gatherings in the world. For decades, filmmakers who had been rejected by Hollywood found their chance at Sundance. Quentin Tarantino, Steven Soderbergh, Damien Chazelle, Ava DuVernay. Careers were launched because Robert Redford believed in outsiders. His family inherits that movement.
Our job and our role is to create a space and a platform to bring new voices and new ways of seeing the world using independent film to this place. That's it.
They are not just heirs to a financial foundation, but to a cultural institution that still holds power. They must decide how to keep it alive, how to adapt it for new generations, how to honor his vision without losing themselves in it. That responsibility is overwhelming. Imagine inheriting not just a bank account, but a cultural monument. Imagine knowing that the world expects you to protect it, nurture it, grow it. Imagine realizing that if you fail, you are not only disappointing your family, but disappointing artists everywhere. That realization is why the tears come. The fortune is not a gift wrapped in gold. It is a burden wrapped in expectation. Yet Redford's philosophy made that burden beautiful. He always believed that fortune should not isolate, but connect. He believed that wealth was not meant to be hoarded, but to be used. His conservation work in the West, his investments in Native communities, his outspoken criticism of reckless politics, all came from that belief. His family now carries that same belief. They cry because they know the test is not whether they will enjoy the wealth, but whether they will use it as wisely as he did. And then there is the shadow of mortality itself. Robert Redford lived to an age where many of his peers had long passed. He faced health scares, he lost friends. He said goodbye to co-stars who had shared his journey. With every farewell, he seemed more determined to leave something meaningful behind. That determination is visible now in the shape of his fortune. It is not only the wealth of a man, but the wealth of a philosophy. It is not only what he earned, but what he preserved. The family's tears are heavy because they know fortune cannot resurrect the man who gave it. They would trade all of it, every dollar, every acre, every film, just to hear his voice again.
Tell me what the goddamn story is, because that's what counts. And I think, without maybe knowing it at the time, I respond to that, the value of story, so that later on in my life and my career.
That is the truth of inheritance. It gives with one hand and takes with the other. It provides comfort while exposing absence. It creates stability while deepening grief. The world will continue to talk about Robert Redford in terms of money. Articles will measure his net worth. Analysts will calculate his estate. Critics will discuss who gets what. But his family will never see it that way. For them, true fortune is something invisible. It is the moral compass he left behind. It is the courage to resist conformity. It is the quiet example of a man who believed in integrity more than applause. In their tears, there is pride. They are proud that the world knew him as a star, but they are prouder that they knew him as a man.
Founder of the Sundance Institute, Sundance Film Festival, and of course, Sundance Channel. Ladies and gentlemen, Robert Redford.
They are proud that the fortune they now inherit is not a shallow empire built on greed, but a layered legacy built on conviction. They cry not only because he is gone, but because he left them more than they ever expected to carry. And so the story of Robert Redford's fortune is not just a story of money. It is a story of sacrifice, of activism, of grief, and of hope. It is a story of a man who understood that the only real wealth is meaning. And that story, that truth, is what now makes his family cry. The fortune of Robert Redford cannot be separated from his artistry. His family knows that while money will be divided in legal terms, art is indivisible. You cannot slice a performance in half. You cannot deposit the power of a film into a bank account. His family cries because the artistry he left behind belongs to them in spirit, but also belongs to the world in permanence. Think about his roles. When he ran across the screen as the Sundance Kid, audiences fell in love with rebellion itself. When he played the con man in The Sting, viewers discovered that charm could carry both danger and delight. When he embodied the journalist in All the President's Men, people were reminded of the fragile strength of democracy. Each role was a mirror of something larger than himself. Each performance carried truth that went beyond the script. That is what his family inherits, a vault of meaning carved in celluloid. But behind those roles was not only the actor. There was the director, the producer, the visionary who believed film could do more than entertain.
And the winner is Robert Redford.
There are a lot of people that I can thank, and I don't want to go on too long, but I couldn't go too much further without expressing what for me is the greatest gratitude.
His film Ordinary People did not simply win Best Picture. It opened doors for intimate family stories in an era when Hollywood chased spectacle. It proved that quiet pain could be louder than explosions. His family inherits that courage. They inherit the knowledge that Redford refused to be limited by the definitions of others. He was never content with being just the golden-haired star. He wanted to be the craftsman, the storyteller, the builder. That refusal is part of the fortune, and it is one reason it makes them cry. Imagine sitting in a private room watching reels of your father or grandfather speaking lines that millions memorized. Imagine seeing his eyes flicker on screen, knowing you once saw those same eyes across a breakfast table. Imagine hearing his voice echo from decades ago, steady and confident, reminding you of nights when he read you stories before bed. That experience is overwhelming. His family cries because film has made him eternal, but it has also made his absence eternal. He is both there and not there. He lives, and yet he is gone. The artistry also comes with the respect of peers. Robert Redford was admired not only by audiences, but by other artists who saw him as a leader. He worked with Paul Newman, Jane Fonda, Meryl Streep, Dustin Hoffman. These collaborations were more than jobs. They were friendships, alliances, shared moments of brilliance. His family inherits the echoes of those alliances. They will receive letters, stories, tributes from people who knew him not as a symbol, but as a partner. Those tributes will remind them of how vast his circle was, and how much of his life was given to the collective work of art. That reminder will sting, because every tribute deepens the absence. And then there is the cultural impact. Redford did not only change cinema, he changed how society saw cinema. Before Sundance, independent films rarely reached large audiences. After Sundance, independent films became a movement. Entire generations of storytellers were freed because of him. His family now holds that movement in trust. They cry because they know that part of the fortune is a responsibility to keep Sundance alive, to keep its doors open for dreamers who still need it. Art and culture are fragile inheritances. They cannot be insured like houses. They cannot be hidden away like jewels. They must be lived, continued, reimagined. That is the task that now belongs to his children and grandchildren. They must find ways to keep Sundance relevant in a digital age, where streaming platforms dominate and independent voices risk being drowned. They must decide how to adapt his vision without betraying it. That responsibility is heavy, and it is part of why tears fall when they think of what he left behind. But the artistry is more than a burden. For every film, every project, every moment of creative daring, there is a piece of Robert Redford that remains alive.
Robert Redford has captivated audiences from both sides of the camera through entertaining motion pictures that often explore vital social, political, and historical themes.
His family can close their eyes and hear him in a line of dialogue. They can watch him smile across a screen and feel for a moment that nothing has changed. That gift is priceless. That is why his fortune is not measured in dollars, but in moments. Consider, too, how art has shaped his image. Redford became a symbol of American masculinity, of natural beauty, of principled rebellion. He was compared to Gatsby when he played Gatsby, yet he was more real than the character. He symbolized an ideal that generations admired. His family inherits that image. They cannot escape it. Wherever they go, people will look at them and remember him. They will carry the shadow of his charm, the weight of his reputation. That too is part of the fortune. It is both a blessing and burden. There is a paradox at the center of this inheritance. On one hand, the films make him eternal. On the other hand, the films remind his family of what they can never again touch. They can see him run, laugh, argue, fall in love on screen. But they cannot call him to share coffee in the morning. They can replay his voice on tape, but they cannot hear him answer their questions in real time. This paradox is what makes their tears flow. He gave the world eternity, but eternity cannot give him back. The artistry is also tied to his choices about fame. Redford never embraced the frenzy of celebrity. He avoided Hollywood parties. He preferred the quiet of his ranch. He wore fame like a coat he could take off when he returned home. That separation gave his family privacy, but it also made them guardians of the man behind the myth. Now that he is gone, they know the myth will grow, and they will be asked to share the private man. They will decide how much to reveal, how much to protect. That decision is part of the fortune. It is a delicate balancing act, and it will make them cry because every decision reopens the wound of absence. So when the world looks at Robert Redford's films and applauds, his family will look and remember. They will remember the moments before the cameras rolled, the frustration of long shoots, the exhaustion of travel. They will remember the relief when he came home, the joy when he could finally rest. They will cry not because of the glamour, but because of the humanity that lived beneath it. That humanity is the real inheritance. That humanity is the fortune. The later years of Robert Redford's life added a new dimension to his fortune. Fame and money had long been established, but wisdom became the most valuable currency. He slowed down, not in his convictions, but in his pace. He spent more time in Utah, more time in nature, more time reflecting on the arc of his life. For his family, these years were priceless. They saw not the Hollywood icon, but the man who still loved to walk trails, still paused to admire a sunset, still cared about small details that others overlooked. This stage of his life carried a sense of farewell.
To come back to this rather plain and beautiful place.
Every time I come up this canyon, every time I see that and feel it, I realize that I'm not taking it for granted. I'm as excited as I was the first time I saw it.
He stepped back from acting. He spoke openly about wanting to retire. He gave interviews where he sounded less like a star and more like a philosopher. He spoke about time, about aging, about the way every chapter must eventually close. His family listened carefully. They knew he was preparing them for the inevitable. Each word, each reflection, was part of the fortune. Not written on paper, not held in contracts, but etched into memory. The tears his family sheds today are mixed with gratitude. They cry because they miss him, but they also cry because he gave them so much of himself before he left. Many people die suddenly, leaving words unspoken. Redford chose to speak while he still could. He left lessons in conversations, reminders in gestures, wisdom in silences. Those who loved him now hold those moments as tightly as they hold any financial inheritance. His philanthropy also became more visible in those later years. He donated land, supported causes, invested in education, and gave generously to environmental organizations. For him, money was never the goal. It was a tool to create change, to preserve beauty, to open doors for others. His family now cries because they see how much of the fortune has already been given away. And that, too, is an inheritance. The knowledge that he valued impact over accumulation. The realization that he measured wealth not by what he kept, but by what he shared. In these final years, the world saw Redford as a symbol of endurance. He aged with dignity, refusing to chase the illusion of eternal youth. He let his hair turn white. He let lines carve his face. He let time speak honestly through his appearance. Audiences admired him for it, but his family felt something deeper. They saw courage. They saw a man who accepted the truth of mortality without fear. That courage is now part of their inheritance. It is a lesson they will carry when they face their own seasons of decline. When the moment finally came and the chapter closed, his family did not only lose a man, they lost the center of their story. They lost the figure whose choices had shaped not only their lives, but the lives of countless strangers. They lost a father and a grandfather, but they also lost a leader whose shadow stretched across culture, art, and activism. That double loss is what makes the tears so uncontrollable. And yet, in grief, there is clarity. His family now understands what his true fortune means. It is not $200 million. It is not a list of properties or royalties or investments. It is the weaving together of meaning, art, love, and conviction. It is a tapestry that cannot be sold, cannot be divided, cannot be erased. That is why they cry, because they know they hold something sacred, something larger than themselves, something they must honor. The world will continue to talk about Robert Redford. His name will remain in film history. His institute will continue to nurture artists. His activism will inspire new generations. But his family will always experience his fortune differently. For them, it is the laughter at the dinner table, the quiet walks on mountain paths, the look in his eyes when he tells them stories about his past. That is the inheritance they will protect. That is the wealth that makes them cry. And so the story ends where it began. A man leaves, and a legacy remains. A fortune is counted, but its value is far greater than any calculation. Robert Redford leaves behind money, yes, but more than money, he leaves behind a life so full that those who loved him are overwhelmed. They cry because they lost him. They cry because they gained so much from him. They cry because fortune, in its truest form, is love, and love always hurts when it is left behind. If Robert Redford's journey moved you, honor his legacy by sharing this story. Subscribe for more timeless reflections, and join us as we remember the lives that truly shaped history.